a quorum. Thank you, Katie. There are a few things we can do without a quorum, so I'll maybe start at 10:04. The agenda is full, but it's not packed, so we'll give folks a moment to toggle from whatever they're doing. And to the folks who are on, welcome. This is the Housing Stability Strategic Advisors May board meeting. Just in case you are jumping from meeting to meeting, it's good to know where you're at. We are so happy that you chose to spend the next hour and a half with us discussing important issues facing housing and our communities from the spectrum from unsheltered to housing stability. My name is Daryl Watson. My pronouns are he, him. We'll start at 10:04 in one more minute, and we'll begin with a land acknowledgement. We'll welcome everyone to the call. We have an opportunity for public comment. On the website for signing up for the meeting or receiving the link for the meeting, there's an opportunity for individuals to share if they need interpretation services, if they need someone to interpret the meeting. So for our future meetings, I thank folks for highlighting yes if you need interpretive services or any additional access service and support as we are facilitating this meeting. We want to make sure that everyone in Denver that wants to participate, that wants to be on the call, has the ability to fully participate. So one more minute and we'll start the meeting. And Katie, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide. And I'll do one quick look around the room to see if we are, where are we at as far as a quorum. I see Josh, I see Melanie, I see Myra, I see Thomas. Let's see here. We are close. I think we need 2 more members, so we can begin without that. And so, Katie, if you don't mind advancing to the next slide, that would be fantastic. And I'll begin with reading the land acknowledgement. I think this is important, and we wanted to really continue to communicate the lens and the focus of equity, the Housing Stability Strategic Advisors Board, and the Department of Housing Stability. I'll focus on equity and ensuring that we speak to the impacts of the communities that lived on these lands prior to most of us being here. So we are adopting a land acknowledgement that Denver City Council and other city agencies have adopted, and we plan on reading this at the beginning of each of our board meetings. For meetings going forward, a different HSSA board member will read the acknowledgement, but this morning I have the privilege of starting us off with the acknowledgement. So the Department of Housing Stability and Housing Stability Strategic Advisors Board honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders, past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that government, academic, land, cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous people. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver. And we can advance to the next slide, Katie. I think we're going to, let me look one more time. Just want to make sure. It appears that we do have a quorum for the meeting. So I would like to encourage the board members, if you have not read the minutes from the prior meeting, they were sent out in the packet that Katie always sends at least a week before our meeting. I'll give you about a half second to take a look at the minutes, and then I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes from our last board meeting from a board member.
Motion to approve the minutes.
And that was by whom?
Quica, Montoya.
Quica, thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. This is Melanie.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, and I won't do a roll call. I ask the board members to come off of mute. We do have a quorum. And if you're in favor of approving the minutes, say yes.
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 Yes. And any abstentions? Any board members that do not approve the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved. I am looking through the names, and let me know, Katie, if Marsha is on the call.
She's not on right now, but we can go ahead and do public comment and then see if she joins us.
That would be perfect. So we wanted to open up, and at the beginning of each of our meetings, we like to open up the call for community members to provide up to 3 minutes of feedback to this board, to the Department of Housing Stability, on any issues impacting housing stability, any questions that you have from any of the initiatives that the Department of Housing Stability is moving through to City Council. This is your opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. As always, we encourage members of the community to speak to the topic. We discourage members of the communities from speaking directly to board members or calling specific board members or specific associates within the Department of Housing Stability by name. These are general comments, and I'm stalling to see if Katie's looking around the room to see if anyone has their hand raised to make any general public comments to the Department of Housing Stability or to the Housing Stability Strategic Advisor Board.
Yep, our members of the public who are in attendance, you should be able to unmute yourself and give comments if you wish.
Let's give individuals just one more minute as we look around the room for any comments. Seeing and hearing none, we'll save all of our very nice words from Marsha for coming to the end with a hope that she'll be joining us on the call. And with that, Britta, I would love to turn it over to you for an update.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Britta Fisher, Chief Housing Officer here. Good to be with you all. We have lots of updates. There's so many things going on. As you know, from our robust strategic plan, there's a lot to do to meet our ambitious goals. Want to start off by talking about one of those ambitious goals that we've reached a milestone on. We here in the city of Denver look at our overall housing inventory and housing stock and how many are income restricted affordable homes. And we have just passed the 25,000 home mark. So 25,050 affordable homes in Denver. So congratulations to everyone who has helped to build those homes, support those homes, and realize that key milestone. So congratulations. We also want to talk about something that has been in the news, and we're also very excited about. The Metro DPA is a down payment assistance program that we have been running for some years, since 2013, and served more than 4,000 households. It is also an opportunity where we saw to invest some of the earnings of that program in a different way and to support a new program that aims to increase homeownership in communities of color by helping households who've been targeted by discriminatory practices, including redlining. So Metro DPA is used across the Front Range, and the social equity program is offered to residents and direct descendants of individuals who lived in a Denver neighborhood that was redlined between 1938 and 2000. The applicants must still qualify for a 30-year fixed rate home loan. They also must earn less than $150,000 per year and must have a credit score above 640. And they can qualify for $15,000 or $25,000 in additional down payment assistance based on their income. So we had a press conference with this on May 9th with the mayor. He was really proud to announce this program, and we've received a lot of interest and many approved applications already. We had one of the homeowners who was there, who is hoping to expand his housing options, as he's got 5 kids and really wants to get out of the 3-bedroom into something more accommodating. And so there was a lot of good press. There was some national press from Reuters as well on this. And so again, thanks to the team, our equity, diversity, and inclusion team, as well as our catalytic programs team, and in particular, Andrew Johnston, who have all worked to get that program out the door and already off to attractive success, with a lot of people coming forward on that. And our thanks to the media for covering that to raise a lot of that interest and knowledge as well. Another one that we want to celebrate is Avenida del Sol. It's always fun to see grand openings. And on May 3rd, there was an 80-unit affordable family housing development in Denver's Westwood neighborhood that was opened. We put in $1.4 million for the project that includes 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units that are restricted between 30% and 80% area median income. And if you have a chance to look at it, please do, because the artwork over the entrance door is just really stunningly beautiful. So take a look at that. Speaking of stunningly beautiful, we also opened Vina by Gorman and Company. That was on May 4th, and it's 150 affordable homes at 48th and Race Street. The city invested a significant amount in this development, more than $5 million, including land acquisition back in 2015 to preserve the affordability, and then coming through with the development financing as well. The site also includes 24,000 square feet of healthcare services on site through Clinica Tepeyac. So we are really excited about living out our whole vision here with healthy, housed, and connected right on this site with Vina. So that picture that you see is one of the Vina units on the slide. We also have Pancratia Hall grand reopening. Finally, we got to celebrate the reopening of Pancratia Hall. It's a restoration program project that was the Sisters of Loretto School and Housing, and is now 74 units of affordable homes with unique layouts. And when I say unique, the mayor really loved it to see the blackboards from the classrooms in the units, the basketball hoops from the gymnasium still in the units. That's my personal favorite. And even the chapel is now an affordable apartment. So they're pretty cool units. And we provided $3.3 million in cash flow loans to help with that restoration. They have some videos online about it. It's pretty cool. Would encourage you to check it out. A lot of effort, a lot of entitlements, a lot of staff and partner work to get there, but we got there, and it was beautiful to behold. Speaking of things that are beautiful to behold, we love getting people housed, and we're excited to say that the second housing surge housed nearly 600 people in 100 days. We had 359 households and 597 individuals who had been experiencing homelessness successfully housed through our housing surge. This is a huge credit to all of our partners for working really hard. We set an ambitious goal. We came just a little bit short of our household goal, but we got a lot of people housed, and we had doubled our goal previously. So we're pretty pleased to see so many people home. We also exceeded our goal on unsheltered households getting direct into housing as well. So we're excited for those 90 households that went straight from safe outdoor spaces, unauthorized encampments, and other unsheltered locations into housing as well. So lots to celebrate there, including a bunch of collaboration and barrier busting, and we have a lot of good work to build on for the months ahead. So thanks again to everyone on that. A couple last things on the policy front. Our expanding housing affordability policy is going to council on June 6th. Welcome you all. If you have anything that you want to write to your council members, or if you want to testify at that hearing, please do. So that's exciting. It's a big policy, lots again in the news and so forth about that. Big deal and a big part of our strategic goals. So thank you for all of your support and encouragement on that front. And then finally, we held a community meeting last Wednesday, which included attendance from a couple of council offices as well as media outlets on our prioritization policy. So that is scheduled for Safety Committee on June 29th. So if you're following the prioritization policy and want to support that, it is on June 29th. So lots of big things happening, people getting housed, new affordable homes, 25,000 plus. It's a very good to see all of this progress, and we're excited about it. So thanks for your support on all this exciting momentum. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Daryl.
Thank you so much, Director Fisher. And I think one of the things that stands out amongst all of the great work that host and host partners are doing, just hearing about the surge. And I think just a win. And when you think of numbers, sometimes we lose the individual people. And I heard some of the stories of some of the individuals, the 90 that were unhoused that got into housing. What a powerful impact on their lives and the lives of their family. And so to you, Britta, and to team that really worked on all of this, but specifically that piece that touched the 90, I think it's going to be a small sound bite that happened, but it's so impactful. And I don't want to let that just pass with just a quick few seconds of your thoughts, but you host impacts lives. And I just want to applaud your staff, all of the partners, and your direction as well, in ensuring that these things continue and we can continue to have a material impact on our community. So thank you so much. I love your readouts because it's real stuff that impacts real people. So thank you. Would love to turn it over to Laura to provide for one of our pillars for the 5-year plan is operations. Not the sexiest pillar of them all, but one of the most important ones to ensure that all of the success that Director Fisher just shared, that those successes continue through the next 4.5, 5 years. So I'll turn it over to you, Laura and team, for a operations overview.
Thanks so much, Daryl. I know I've gotten a chance to be part of a number of these meetings, but just to reintroduce myself, if I haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet, I'm Laura Brazinski. I'm our Deputy Director of Operations. We've got a few other team members joining here today and providing some additional content, but want to just acknowledge that this is your final of 4 pillars. As an overview from the strategic plan, you've gotten a chance to already hear about our homelessness resolution work, our housing opportunity work, and our housing stability work. And those are critical things that are the work that helps to provide the services that our community needs. The operations pillar is really the support to the team within host that helps make those things possible as far as services out into the community. So want to talk a little bit more about some of that infrastructure and what some of the main components are within the operations division that help make those things possible. So here's a quick overview of some of the team members and then the teams within the operations division within host. We have Catherine Potts, which you may have gotten a chance to meet. She's our office manager and helps to provide executive support through her team to all of host and our leadership team, and really keep our technological solutions, help keep our work environment strong. So Catherine Potts, if you're ever looking for office support, is our office manager. I know you all have gotten a chance to meet Sabrina Alley and our communications team. She's our communications and engagement director. I'm not sure if I saw Sabrina on yet. There you are. I see you popping on, so you've gotten a chance to meet Sabrina. The scope of our communications and then also engagement is such a critical part of the infrastructure of host. We're going to talk a little bit more about each of these through the goals of the strategic plan, but want to acknowledge her work. Jennifer Bice, who I will just double check to see if Jennifer is on today and can turn her camera on. It looks like she's not on with us today, but I know you've gotten a chance to meet with Jennifer Bice. She's our data policy and strategy director, so has provided a lot of support on our strategic plan, our policy initiatives, and then annual action plans as we go through that. So you'll get a chance to interface quite a bit with Jennifer Bice and her team. Ebony Santucci is our contract and performance manager. What's unique around host is that we have a contract support embedded into each of our divisions. So in all of those different pillars that you've learned about so far, we have team members that are helping to support contracts. I like to say sometimes that contracts are the widget that host specializes in, because we have a small number of areas where we provide direct service. But we mostly contract with partners to develop housing, to provide services, to engage with community. And so a big part of what we do is the contractual infrastructure to help support those partnerships with community members who directly provide services. And then we have our finance team. Amy Webb, I see you here if you want to wave and say hello. Amy is our finance director who really is providing support across a range of different areas of finance, from the accounting perspective of paying our invoices and tracking as funds go out, from the budgeting perspective and helping to forecast what our needs are and how we plan to align resources with current needs. We're going to talk a little bit more about budget today. And then we also have a large portfolio of existing loans where we have invested into the development of affordable housing, and we're maintaining those loans over the life of that agreement. So there's a big component around that of really helping to oversee our portfolio of affordable homes. And then finally, we also have project management support with Alex Marquesi, who is a team member that is supporting across all of our divisions where we may have critical infrastructure as far as project management, which may be development of policies and procedures for the teams, or other supports as far as taking a specific development project from start to finish. So that's a quick overview of our team and the different divisions and anchors that we have within each of our spans of scope of work. If you want to go to the next slide, Katie. Just to remind you of what our operations pillar is anchored in for our strategic plan. This is the impact statement that is outlined in the strategic plan. That Denver residents and host partners will receive efficient, timely, and transparent support and have confidence that host is measuring what matters and effectively engaging in the community. So that's what a lot of our goals are aiming to achieve, the impact we're seeking to support as far as all of our work across operations and what's reflected in our strategic plan. So the next couple of slides are really an overview of some of the critical goals in the strategic plan around operations, and then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the big things that we are working on this year relative to effectuating those goals that are outlined in the 5-year strategic plan. So this first one is really anchored around communications and engagement. And so again, Sabrina and team leading in this space, thank you. So this improved communications channel is really a recognition that we have a two-way street as far as how we make sure community members, those who are in need of our services, stakeholders, policymakers understand our work and the different communication channels that we may utilize to help inform them, but that we're also creating engagement opportunities to help learn from those impacted groups about our work and about how we may be able to fill gaps or address needs that are in this area. So improving communication channels and aligning to that community need. So really 2022 is a baseline year for us as far as measuring the effectiveness of our communication channels and then working to improve those over the span of the 5 years for the strategic plan. So that's what's really anchored in that first goal, and then recognizing again with that focus on how we both share information and learn from community around gaps, really working to increase the number as well as the type of engagement opportunities that we provide to the community. For, as you know, we have an important anchor for our strategic plan in equity. And so how we reach a broad span of audience that is impacted by our services and could benefit from our services, and making sure we're meeting them where they're at as far as understanding needs and informing our strategies here with the team. So that's a little bit around the communications goal within the 5-year strategic plan. The next here is really around providing for the component of that impact statement that is that efficient investment of resources. So I said earlier that really our big widget and host, the big thing that we help to effectuate our plans is partnerships with a broad array of developers, service providers, nonprofit organizations, and the tool that we utilize to invest resources to help make those services possible is contracts. So we have a number of different kinds of contracts or scopes as far as how we invest. We have service contracts that may help to provide shelter operations, rehousing programs, other services out into the community. And then we have development contracts. We may invest into a partner to create or preserve affordable housing units, and that comes with an affordability restriction for the life of that project. Those are our two primary ways that we invest. So you see here in this first component of contracts that we have some goals in our strategic plan around the timeline associated with the execution of those contracts, from when we have a concept that we're seeking to invest in and an amount to when we have a fully executed contract. For any contract that is over $500,000, we have to get City Council approval to be able to fully execute that contract. So you'll notice what's called out here is a timeline associated with contracts that are over $500,000, because there's a required step of getting that City Council approval. So our goals here, as you see in the plan, are to reach a fully executed contract for those that are under $500,000 that don't need that City Council approval in under 60 days. But recognizing that we do have to have those approvals over $500,000, we're seeking for 75 days for those that are above $500,000, integrating that timeline for council approval. Development contracts just take a little bit more nuance as far as pulling all of the pieces together. They're usually a little bit longer and more robust contracts. So our goal for those is 90 days for development contracts. The other piece that is outlined here is the timeline for procurement. So prior to our ability to actually execute a contract for a service or a development, we have to procure and create an opportunity to receive proposals that may really respond to the need we're trying to fill. And so we conduct competitive procurements that help us receive those through a shared conduit. So our timeline for procurement, we know impacts our ability to move to contract, our ability to provide services in the community. So we're seeking to reduce the timeline that it takes us to go from receipt of procurement and notification of decision to 30 days as far as our decision on award to move forward with contract. So you'll see those timelines outlined here as well. And then finally, our goal in the strategic plan around finance is that, once we've procured for something, contract with a service provider to provide that opportunity for the community, we also then have to receive a request for resources that allows us to pay for the services that was provided. So the length of time that we are using to process the payment and pay an invoice for those service, we're seeking to reduce from 21 days down to 7 days to make sure that our partners who are providing the service get those resources out into the community as quickly as possible. So this is a overview of the goals around procurement, contracts, as well as finance in the strategic plan. This next slide is an overview of some of the infrastructure around expenditure of resources and also the outcomes that are being achieved through those contracts that we are engaging with partners to help ensure that we're meeting the needs in the community. So we also have some baseline information here that we're seeking to gather in 2022 around reporting tools. When we invest into that contract, we have the scope of how we pay resources to partners to provide that service, but we also have reporting tools. We utilize a platform called Salesforce for a majority of our contracts as far as outcomes that are achieved, how many households are served, how many units that have been leased up. As far as those contracts, we also use the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, to track for those contracts in the homelessness resolution space, how we are achieving outcomes associated with contracts, really baselining in 2022, the effectiveness and usability of those tools on the reporting side so that we can again make improvements over the course of the 5-year strategic plan. We also want to understand from partners how they feel those tools are as far as their training to utilize those and what supports they may need to more effectively utilize those tools for reporting. That's another component of what we're baselining this year. And then a big part of this is how we utilize that information to create publicly available dashboards that help, again, members of the public, stakeholders like the HSSA, policymakers, and others who may be interested in learning more about the outcomes that we're achieving so that through those service contracts and how many households or units we're expecting to serve, how we're meeting our goals of the 5-year strategic plan, and then finally, the financial investments that we're making with the critical array of resources that we use as host to help effectuate these plans. So a publicly available finance as well as reporting dashboard are really under development and a priority for us in operations in 2022. And this is the final goal on the next slide. As far as the operations work, we recognize that a critical component of how we really achieve the goals in our strategic plan is how we invest towards contracts, partnerships, development for housing and services to serve those experiencing homelessness. But another critical infrastructure of how we effectuate these plans is the policies that complement those resources. We've talked in a number of meetings this year around some specific policy agenda items, including, as Britta highlighted earlier, the Expanding Housing Affordability Project and the prioritization policy. Those are a complement to how we invest resources. But there's a number of other recommendations in the strategic plan that outline really partnerships on a regional level, other policy priorities that we would seek to focus on over the course of the coming years. So this is an anchor as far as advancing those citywide and regional approaches, as well as the policy and legislative approaches that are really helping to complement those investments in the strategic plan. So we have policy, the prioritization policy as a priority for this year, but there's a number of other things that are outlined in that plan as well. And the last slide is the 2022 action plan. So these are a few of the things that have been sprinkled already into the slides, but just to reiterate and pull up the things that are the priorities for 2022. So again, baselining information from stakeholders and community around those communication and engagement tools and channels to make sure we're understanding what is effective, where are there gaps, and how we can improve these communication tools over the course of the strategic plan. We're also really working to develop and implement intentional strategic communication and engagement plans for priorities in this 2022 year. So for some of the big things like expanding housing affordability again and prioritization policy, really being intentional about how we reach to community to explain and hear feedback on those tools has been a pretty critical focus for us this year. We are also doing a lot this year in 2022 to really, as a relatively new city agency, provide support for those who are awarded contracts from the city for the provision of services to help onboard and support grantees in their process to work with us, whether that's training on how to submit invoices, what the reporting tools are, and how we as a host team can support service providers during the time that they are investing resources in partnership with us, really strengthening that onboarding process for both new as well as existing contractors. That resource is available. We are also really working, as I mentioned, on those publicly available reporting tools on both the financial as well as the performance side. We have some further conversation about those items in the queue as far as the agendas for this group over the coming months. So look forward to digging in a little further with you on those. And then really trying to envision how our annual housing forum really transitions to a regional housing and homelessness conference to ensure that we are thinking about that scope of the item of regional partnerships in how we engage stakeholders and members of the public in what has been a Denver-focused forum in the past, thinking about that now in our regional scope. So that is a very high-level overview, I know, of some of the work that we do in operations. There's a portion of this agenda that's going to dive very specifically into budget and talk about what's the span of resources for host in 2022 as a primer on conversations for 2023, but also how we spend resources across our areas and on what. So know that is coming as another section here of our agenda. But let me just pause here and see what questions you may have, clarifications, additional information as far as operations and how we support hosts and those who we contract with, to see what else I can provide here.
Laura, first and
I'll hand it
foremost,
to you as
thank
far
you.
as facilitating.
No, I was just going to say, Laura, thank you so much. It's an overview, but you provided great specifics within this important pillar that kind of really is a foundation for all of the other work that the department does. Wanted to see if first from Laura's team, if anyone else wants to sprinkle any additional comments in, and if seeing none, then members of HASA, the board, want to open it up for you for questions. So members of Laura's team, anything that you would like to add any additional flavor on specific to operations and the work that you do within this pretty amazing team? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to look at the faces of each of our talented and inquisitive HSSA board members. I know that there are some questions out there. We will be able to dive a little more deeply into parts of operations that impacts finance and budgeting in the next overview that's going to be coming through from the department to conclude this meeting. But questions folks have in operations, whether it's specific to our action plan or specific to the 5-year plan.
I have a question.
Please,
I'm really
go for it,
excited.
Trika.
I'm really excited to see this 2022 action plan. it's wonderful seeing that you're focusing on how to best support the, the people that are doing the boots on the ground work, like the service provider organizations. Tell me, have you gathered feedback from these organizations on how, to best get the boots on the ground feedback of the people that are doing the reporting and the billing, and have you solicited feedback from groups like HLC and other, multi-agency meetings and collaborations?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kwika. I think we started to hear some of the benefits and barriers even during the strategic plan and 2022 action plan. So I think we've started to get some baseline commentary from the engagement that we conducted primarily last year around what needed to be in the strategic plan and what were gaps that we needed to address. So I would say that's the first layer of where we started to get feedback. We've also started to do trainings already this year. We had a big training at the end of March where we pulled grantees together and did a lot of background and also had some opportunity for feedback. So there were some themes that came from that already this year, but there is a survey that's anticipated as a baseline of the strengths and barriers to working with host that we expect to roll out a little bit later this year, that I think will give us some more quantitative and qualitative feedback that will help inform what the specific items are that partners feel are the current barriers. So that's coming. It's something our team is working on, some of the contents of that survey to be able to roll out. But I do think we have at least some ideas that have come from those engagement on where we have priorities, but that survey will give us a little bit more as well. And certainly Amy or Sabrina, if you have any additional context, please do add it. But those are at least some starting places where we have some and anticipate more feedback coming.
Thank you, Laura. And I'm waiting to see if there's, if Amy or Sabrina had additional content. And I have a quick follow-up on that.
I don't. I'm good. Thank you, Daryl.
My quick follow-up on, I think the survey, are there any other points of contact, like, for example, focus groups or things that provide more opportunity for kind of a narrative around the why comments are maybe seen within a specific survey? So are there any other ways in which we're meeting with partners, gathering that information, and as Kwika communicated, kind of allowing for that voice to impact the work that's being done?
Right. Well, thanks, Daryl. I'm Sabrina Ali, the Director of Communications and Community Engagement, for those of you who I have not met. We are always meeting with a variety of different stakeholders, and we do that in a lot of different ways. So HSSA itself is one of the ways that we look to receive feedback from people with lived expertise throughout our community, and the public being invited to make comment at these meetings. But we also have other formal opportunities like the homeless advisory meetings that we hold quarterly. Those are part of our agreement as part of the Lyall settlement, but we make sincere efforts to quarterly go out and really try to get all of our providers to attend those meetings and as advocates on behalf of people experiencing homelessness, and then also for people who are unhoused to attend and give us feedback. We are constantly talking with the folks who we work with on those, including Denver Homeless Out Loud and others, on how we can make improvements to those. We do have a number of changes that I'm expecting to happen in coming months to try to make those more inclusive meetings. And then we also do a number of meetings with my team and others in the department with smaller neighborhood organizations and other interested parties. So that can vary from council district meetings to registered neighborhood organizations to we meet with Mutual Aid Monday, and Therese, who used to be with Denver Homeless Out Loud, now has a new organization called HAND. So we're working on those and thinking a lot about how we might kind of coalesce them into some different groups. And I think you'll be seeing some proposals from us in coming months on how we plan to formalize those opportunities more in the next year.
Thank you so much, Sabrina, for adding that additional information. Quick, I see your hand is still up. Just want to make sure that your question and your voice, that you were heard, and the answer is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate Sabrina for mentioning the people on the ground, the people we're serving. So I do. That wasn't necessarily what my question was about. My question was more for feedback from agency meetings, like feedback from the service providers that are submitting for billing and reporting. Are you gaining feedback about your processes in that way? That was more of my question, but I don't mind being the voice of the lived experience always, so.
Yeah, and just to answer that, I think, Laura was saying we're trying to do some of that in direct trainings with our partner providers, but we also do have plans to do an actual survey and to be checking in with folks that way. We do attend HLC, which is the Homelessness Leadership Council meetings on a regular basis as well, and always invite other opportunities for us to reach out and try to make those connections with our providers. We have a number of meetings that we do in different, for our different divisions. So, folks in the opportunity team have a meeting that they're doing with developers to try to work with them directly. Our homelessness resolution side has meetings about shelter and outreach with their teams of people so that they're talking together regularly. So those meetings are happening within the divisions as well. And then I think, again, you'll see in the survey some of the questions that we're looking to improve processes in the operations team. You'll see us asking questions about that in surveys that will go out. And for those of you who aren't, if you're a partner, like a provider partner, if you're not already signed up for our newsletter, we used to just do it every other month. It's now a monthly newsletter. And we try to make sure that we're also getting information about all of that out to folks about when there will be opportunities for input through policy development. All of our community meetings, those kinds of things are always in our newsletter. So I recommend people sign up for that if you aren't. We try to make sure all of our partners are automatically added to that list, but let us know if you need to be added.
Thank you, Sabrina. And Melanie, I know I see your hand, but I think Angie has maybe something to add to the last question. And so Melanie, I will come to you after Angie.
Thanks, Daryl, you nailed it. So was just gonna mention where kind of our operations and homelessness resolution and housing stability work all overlaps is our team of program officers who are charged with overseeing these contracts and the partnerships that we have in the community also go out on a quarterly basis to do site visits with the provider partners and to engage with folks who are utilizing the services as well as those who are directly implementing the services to understand what's working well, what are the challenges, how can host be a better partner. So we've been really excited that kind of monitoring on an annual basis and then those quarterly kind of technical assistance and support site visits are happening as well.
Thank you so much, Angie, and Kuika, thank you for bringing forward that question and generating so much thought and dialogue. It's an important point. Melanie, I would love to roll to you for any additional points or your individual question.
Thanks, Daryl. And thanks, Laura and team for this presentation as well. I just continue to feel really excited about all the work that's happening in the focus areas. And I wanted to ask about something that I've seen before, but hadn't, I think, focused on as much, which is the reimagining of the Regional Housing and Homelessness Conference. That feels really exciting and another amazing vehicle to kind of advance the intention and the focus on regionalism. So just really appreciate that. And Laura, forgive me if you mentioned some of this and I didn't consume the information, but was just curious kind of early thinking on, timing or planning approach. I know that has historically had been, I think, in May. And so I was just curious, kind of a high level, what y'all's initial thoughts were about moving that forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Sabrina, I know she's been working a lot with the team on this, so I'll let you lead on that one, Sabrina, and I'll support wherever I can too.
Okay. Yeah, Melissa, Toddy, and I have actually had some initial conversations with MDHI about how this might work with some of the things they're doing with their annual conference. So we've kind of started there, and things got put on hold for a little bit, but I think we're going to be restarting those conversations. And part of what we definitely want to be doing is reaching out to community to find out what is going to be most helpful to you. But just like with, host bringing together those different components of our work so that we're talking with each other and learning from each other, we thought this would be a good approach to an annual conference. And so really looking at how we might bring in different partners to that. So you can expect to be hearing more about that in the coming months, but haven't really dug in and engaged on how we're going to do all of that just yet. More to come, I guess I would say.
That is one. Thank you for those details. That's perfect. I appreciate that and look forward to that starting to move forward.
Thanks so much, Melanie. And Angie, I see your hand is up. Is it up? Oh, there you go. You just like your hand to be up. That's all. Any other questions from members of the board? And I have a very quick question, and Melanie may impact you still, but looking around the board to see of our leaders if there are any additional questions on operations. Seeing and hearing none, I've had the opportunity to sit in a few R&O meetings, registered neighborhood organization meetings, and the question that comes up has come up a few times now, and I think I've posed this a few times to the leadership here, is around the leveraging of the HMIS system, the Housing Management Information System, and the data that's being placed in there as far as from providers. When we're looking at the transparency piece of the targets for operations, and then that's going to move most likely to output an outcome to our dashboard. Is there going to be some transparency around kind of the how should I word this? For folks who place information into the system that does not provide all of the information, for example, all of the demographic, all of the information that the HMIS system can support. There are some providers that are providing more information than others. Will within the transparency of kind of your view for kind of, and that's going to have some direct impact on your dashboarding, direct impact on what communities can see as to, really what's the real on the streets, what's the real as far as who's leveraging support from providers. Is there going to be additional transparency in that? Is there going to be a weighting as to what information is absolutely vital to ensure that if we have a dashboard, that dashboard is accurate because folks are putting in similar information? We're very curious on that and what steps folks are taking to support MDHI, Melanie, and everyone else as they work to make sure that the information we're using for our budgeting and everything else that is not only transparent, but it is accurate. And Angie, I see you and I see Laura.
Yeah, I can speak to a few things since it's regarding the HMIS system specifically, and then Laura, you can follow up with more from that data strategy and policy team. So one thing I'll mention, so that the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, is not a City of Denver owned product, right? So it is operated through the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative, our Continuum of Care agency, and is a statewide system that we use here in Colorado. So we've made some really great progress in terms of being able to get on the same system as a whole state so that we're able to kind of have some systemic level view statewide from that through MDHI. Host has a really special and powerful partnership with MDHI in that we are able to have access to HMIS data and be able to pull out more aggregate data from that so that we can inform our dashboards and our public facing tools. to represent the outcomes of the programs that we fund. So really importantly to note, HMIS is a client level data tool. So it includes, people's personally identifying information, and in some cases, information, that could reveal around their health or mental health status. And so there are a lot of protections and safeguards in place because of the very personal nature of that information. But we do pull out aggregate data. Two things we're working on right now. One, as we've referenced before, the build out of those dashboards so that host has public facing tools that are able to demonstrate progress through our contracted partners on these really important outcomes around homelessness. And then secondly, we're working on a strategy with all of our partners to increase their utilization and their reliability of data within HMIS, especially as we just expanded services throughout COVID. A lot of partners were having to just rely on spreadsheets and different manual accounts to try and get their nightly data reconciled. And so our data team has been working to implement some new engagement across our shelter partners first, and then our other partners second, to ensure that we have accurate and reliable nightly data, specifically right now around shelter utilization and capacity in HMIS, that's going to be more reliable for our nightly decision making and our longer term planning. So there's just a couple of things I wanted to hit on.
And I'll just add a little bit and pull out the word aggregate as far as what Angie said, is that the public facing dashboard that we're talking about in this operation space is really something that pulls together the range of different programs and partnerships that we have that help to achieve the goals of the strategic plan. So the numbers and the goals that you see in the strategic plan space around homelessness resolution and other areas, excuse me, are really the focus of what that dashboard would seek to explain, and pulling from all of the different sources, including HMIS, but across partnerships and across providers to help share those numbers and the updates that are in the strategic plan. So just wanted to highlight that piece as well.
Very helpful, Laura and Angie, and that it's the aggregated data. And I know there'll be some disaggregation of that information based on other partners. I just wanted to highlight within the continuous improvement target for operations. I know that we've discussed increasing the reliability. I hope you're all right, Laura, increasing the reliability of the data that's entered. I know that it's of import to you, MDHI, and all of the partners that leverage it, but I wanted to at least call that out because that's, believe it or not, that is a question folks are asking, if the information we're all putting in and that we're leveraging to say success or any of the rating for how we're performing, that data has a high level of reliability, even in the aggregated form and even in the disaggregated from all the other agencies. So Sabrina, I see your hand, and then if there are no other questions from members of the board, we'll transition to our final presentation on the budget, overview of the budget. So Sabrina, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Daryl. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that Jennifer and team are working on being able to bring those dashboards to HSSA. We have been looking at the schedule and just trying to figure out when we can squeeze that in, because we want to have plenty of time to go over it with you and show it to you and get your feedback on it. But at the same time, there's a lot of really important conversation happening around the budget this time of year. So we're looking at when is going to be the best opportunity, and we will be working to get that on your schedule.
That is awesome, Sabrina. Thank you so much for saying that, and then also for the segue to our overview of budget. Now, I know HSSA members, this is going to be our first touch. We knew that last year we were not, because of when the forming of the advisory board, we weren't at the onset of this discussion. This is just our first ability. So the department is not going to provide a full readout of budget priorities, but this will be our first touch. Would love to hear your thoughts. I'm not sure how long, leaders, you're thinking this presentation, but if we can try to keep at maybe 15 minutes at the end of the meeting for board members to ask questions. So from now to 11:15, it sounds like a good amount of time for this present out so the board has time to ask questions.
That sounds great, Daryl. I'm going to have Amy Webb help give you a little bit more of an overview as our finance director of what our sources are and how we utilize them. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Amy to give you a little bit more information, and I'll work to support questions as well.
Thank you, Laura. Hope you're okay over there. I've had that happen. For those of you who have not met me, my name is Amy Webb. I am the financial director for Host, and this is going to be a brief overview of our Host budget. So this first slide line is the timeline for the 2023 budget process, which is the overall city process, so not specific to Host, but overall for the city and county of Denver. And we are currently in the orange phase right now. So April through June is when we're actually preparing for the 2023 budget. We review all of our budget changes. If we have any requests to increase or do any expansions for our budget table, we would prepare those during this time. We also prepare the narratives and kind of the structure that goes into the overall book that you typically see published at the end of the year. After this period, we'll go into the actual proposal review, and that's when our budget and management office takes all of the proposals across the city, including Host, to determine which proposals they want to prioritize, how much budget is available in 2023 across the city, and then allocates kind of the preliminary decisions about that to prepare for mayoral review. Once the mayor review and approves those budget items, that gets submitted by September 15th, and you'll see those mayoral meetings July through August in preparation for that September meeting. And after that, we go into the public review and final approval. So this is what you're probably typically familiar with when you start seeing city council presentations and public hearings on the agency proposals. And then city council gets an opportunity to propose any amendments to that budget. And then the final budget would be submitted and adopted for final publishing in October and November. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide is the total budget for 2022. So this is the projected budget for the Department of Housing Stability. You'll see that we have some color-coded funding sources here. And just to give an overall explanation of what some of those funding sources are, our $270 million budget is comprised of obviously general fund dollars, which is a culmination of the citywide sales tax and other revenues that are distributed across city agencies. Then the next lighter blue color is our Affordable Housing Fund. You may also see this referred to as the Affordable Housing Property Tax and Other Local Revenue Fund, which includes our linkage fee fund as well. Homelessness Resolution Fund is the orange color, so $40.9 million there, and that was the initial, you may hear that referred to as the 2B budget initiative that was approved a year before. And then we have our federal funds. So the federal funds, the $12.9 million would include federally funded programs through Department of Housing and Urban Development, such as CDBG, HOME, HOPWA, and Emergency Solutions Grant. Our other funds in the green really is a culmination of a lot of other legacy funds that we've had from the transition from DDO and DHS over to Host. So this would include things like the Homeless Services Fund, the Homelessness Donations Fund, our original revolving affordable housing fund, amongst others. So the next dark gray area, $116 million, is all of our COVID response and recovery funds. So this will include all of our FEMA allocations, CARES Act, and ARPA that we are currently programming for. The light gray area is also COVID response and recovery, and this represents the HOME ARPA grant. And at the at the creation of the 2022 budget, that grant was not yet final. So that's why we had an unknown category there, because we hadn't actually received our grant award letter and executed and approved that. So we just wanted to call that piece out to make sure that everyone knew it was pending, but that is now in the final stages. Next slide, please. All right, so now we take that same $270 million and we have this broken down by the plan uses, by pillar, so our departmental units, and then the revenue source for 2022. And this kind of gives you a visual indication of how that budget is spread out across our units. So if you look in the leftmost column, of course, for the total budget, you can see that there's a small portion that is set aside for D3 payments and operations, and that operations percentage really is reflective of personnel costs, and then a few non-personnel items. 48% for homelessness resolution, as that is the largest use of funding across host. 13% for housing stability, and that would include, tenant rent and utility programs, et cetera, emergency rental assistance, for example. And then our housing opportunity, about 33%, and this would include all of our developmental contracts to do affordable housing development. Then we have in the next 3 columns, kind of a recategorization of those costs by our largest funding sources. So the first one, Affordable Housing Fund, again, D3, very large portion of that fund, and then a small percent for personnel and operations, resolution, stability, et cetera. The HRF, again, the Homelessness Resolution Fund, or 2B, you may know as that referred to. And then the other, again, would be the allocation of all of the other funding streams. So to include our legacy funds, grants, or any other nominal sources would be categorized in the other column. Next slide, please. So this particular slide then breaks down these plan uses by investment type and revenue source for the 2022 budget. So this really shows you in a different visual way the allocation of funds for the areas that we have broadly called our safety net areas. So shelter and services, housing assistance, unit development and preservation, administration, and then again, just calling out particularly that DHA payment for D3 so it doesn't skew the other figures, because those dollars don't directly go to host, although are benefiting affordable housing overall. So you can see from this slide in the purple shaded area that shelter and services is the majority of the revenue source and use for this particular allocation. And then housing assistance, unit development and preservation, again, would be most for the housing opportunity and the development and preservation of affordable units. And then the gray area would be the administration dollars that we set aside out of each of those areas. And then again, the gray portion would be just a reflection of that D3 payment so that it doesn't skew the spending and revenue sources in the other categories. Questions or comments?
Amy, thank you so much, and team, because I know this was not just your handiwork. Others helped to support you in this. Thank you for pulling this together. Information is very helpful. I'm wondering, can we, Katie, go back to the first budget slide, and then we could, so if there are questions from, actually the second, I would say that. If you don't mind advancing to the next slide from there. There you go. And then, so just we can set up for questions. Members of the board, understand that this is one of the integral roles of our opportunities of our role is to provide advice to the department on budgeting. Want to see what questions board members have. I do have a few, but I want to wait until we hear from other leaders. Looking for any hands. I'm married to an educator, so he always recommends a teacher pause, and this is what that is. So why don't I jump in first? Amy, once again, thank you. May I ask for structurally, as far as how the budget is being communicated? And I know this is our first iteration. I know we're going to have a separate meetings on this. Does Department of Host, do you have a way of tracking spend as it is, as far as if you're ramping up or ramping down on specific spend based on the categories you have? So for example, if the spend for your ask for the 2023 budget for affordable housing fund or for any of the other color-coded line items are being increased by 2% or 3% in the 2023, is there a way to demonstrate that to this board and provide a narrative on a why? So for example, you can say we've made a dent, or we've hit 100% of our goals within a 5-year plan on this aspect of the budget. So we are moving some of the targeted funds where our spend will be 2% less as far as our request within the budget for 2023 than it is today. Is there that level of kind of segmenting and creating a narrative around how funds are being spent? Is that going to be a part of what you're providing? If it isn't, are you able to provide that to the board so we can have a better sense as far as your planning and what's going to be going before council?
Yeah, I think we definitely could provide that for you, of course, in order to provide a comparison.
Yeah.
In that way, we would first have to get through the budget process to determine kind of where those increases and decreases would lie, and provide that to you in a narrative fashion, but we could absolutely provide that, Daryl.
Is there a forecast, Amy, even before it's solid? Because I know once it goes through the council process, I know the imperatives of the administration, it will impact any forecasting. We understand there is an opportunity there may be an opportunity for forecasting prior to that. So do you think within that forecasting process, just you knowing the lay of the land for finance, you're thinking it's going to be some shrinkage here, there's going to be growth? Obviously, shrinkage will be with the COVID response. Possibly, I'm sure there's going to be anticipation of shrinking that to some lower number. That's the kind of stuff I'm thinking of that seems apparent, even though the administration still has the final say as we go through this process.
Yeah, I think definitely one thing to know, just as you said, Daryl, is there will be some smaller allocations in those areas. However, just keep in mind that a lot of the projections that went into this dollar figure are still in the very early stages. So the GO bond approval, for example, would be included in that 116 million in very early stages of that. Still the early stages of the ARPA contracts that were approved, and also the new iteration of the 2023 ARPA awards that we don't yet have a focus on the depth of what those will be. So we will definitely do our best to give any preliminary information as we receive it. I know a lot of those meetings are happening today to get our public input process in order to kind of direct how the investment of those second round allocations are going to go.
Okay, and the thinking from that, and once again, I think everyone understands forecasting, it won't be baked in, but for the thinking of that, is that a possibility with these still being preliminary numbers, still lots of movement, lots of input from others? Is there a thought that at our meeting next month that we would be able to have, not so much the narrative, I understand the narrative piece would be hard, but at least kind of directionally, what's the anticipation for shrinkage, and possibly even looking at what the governor, not the governor, but the state dollars identified for homelessness resolution, the percent of that, I think that's like 75 million or whatever, what percent Denver possibly is going to have, and how does that impact these numbers? And Laura, I see your hand is up. My questions may be a lot more specific than the team is able to answer, but I felt it's important to bring it into the room. Laura, please, and then Amy, obviously, I would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Certainly, I think you're asking really great questions, Daryl, and I just want to unpack a couple of things. I think one component of what may be helpful to understand for team members is the component of your question that is spending against budgeted amounts for 2022. So here are the places where we planned to spend resources versus here is what it looks like for allocation against that plan so far in 2022. And that's definitely a piece of what we can focus on in our deep dive in June. So I just wanted to highlight that kind of the spending against the plan is one piece of this. The other piece I just wanted to add is the other piece, which is how we plan for then 2023 and how we utilize our conversation and time in June to help inform some of the asks or planning for the 2023 budget process. And that'll be another part of the focus of that June deep dive. But I wanted to just highlight from what you have pulled up here that some of these resources that you see in our 2022 budget are dedicated resources for housing and homelessness, and some of them are infusions of resources in this budget year. And I just wanted to differentiate that homelessness resolution fund, affordable housing fund, the federal funds, there's some predictability to those sources as dedicated revenue that we can plan around. We get more formal projections for those a little later in the budget process, but we have historic patterns that we can utilize to help inform those more dedicated resources to help planning for 2023. But those other complementary resources that were infusions for this year and our infusions again in the next year's citywide budget, as far as the COVID recovery response resources from the American Rescue Plan Act, that's where they're not dedicated resources for housing and homelessness. They're citywide resources of which we're planning across partners within the city to respond to gaps that may address recovery needs. And so we'll be working with Department of Finance and seeking to get feedback around the opportunities for expenditure of those. But those other resources are more host controlled, dedicated resources for housing and homelessness. And so that can be a part where we dive a little deeper into June to understand the nuances of those particular dedicated resources, what the trends in collection are for those, and what has been planned to date. But I just want to highlight the differences between some of the sources that you see on that stack that we can dive into a little bit more in June.
That's helpful, Laura. And I love the fact that we have this everyone's names, if not faces, showing. Want to see if any other board members have questions. And I have like one or two more. You know, I did 30 years in finance. Once again, my stalling tactic. So for board members to jump in, but 30 years in finance, so my brain clicks when it comes to numbers and data. I love it to see more. And I think this is going to be a great discussion in June. Myra, I see your hand is up if you don't mind jumping in.
Of course, thank you. And thank you all for the great presentation and information. And that last graphic was super helpful. And after the questions that Daryl shared, I imagine this next one might be a little difficult because of all of the specific allocations. But I was wondering if this total budget could also be represented in what the funding is directed for, whether it's services, programming, construction of new housing units, maintenance, like where is this funding going? But I understand that might be a lot more difficult with allocations, but I think it'd be helpful to know.
So I think just as an aside, on that very last slide, right prior to the question comment slide, kind of gives you at least that initial breakdown that you're speaking to, where services, programming, and then the unit development and preservation is where that construction piece would live. So we do have some initial figures toward that as well in that very last slide 24.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. And I see Maria's. I know you're saying something beautiful, but you're on mute. Is it me or I still can't hear you? Can everyone else hear?
No volume.
So you're
Maria.
double muted, Maria. You've got skills. Huh. You'll type it in chat so I can read fingers. And I think sometimes the actual laptop is muted as well as you are. So if you want to hit your laptop and take that mute off. I'll ask my question, and then if you want to put yours in chat, I will speak for you, sister. I know. My question also is on continuous improvement. And I know that for operations, obviously, there is a clear need for additional staff support along all of the internal areas within host. My question to the team, is there opportunity for not even a deeper dive on that piece, but kind of a demonstration of the cost per, let's say, operations? Is there a percent based on current FTE that you are, and I'm throwing out crazy numbers, that there is a cost per individual working within host at this level? It costs $90,000 per individual, throwing out a crazy number. You're going to have an increase based on where you're seeing the opportunity within host of hiring 60 more folks, 100 more folks, whatever. Is there through your continuous improvement processes and the ways that you're looking at doing things smarter with the tax dollars that are being provided, do we have a sense of how the operational impact, even as you're growing, that you're showing efficiencies? Is there an efficiency target within host that you're currently doing? And if there isn't, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot. I do know that's a target oftentimes in budgets to demonstrate efficiency for operations and operating with more folks with a smaller percent of that for operations. I'm curious if that is anywhere within your internal 2022 review of how money was spent, and if that's going to be reflected at all in what you're seeking in your dialogues for 2023. Complex question, but anyone that wants to jump in on that, and once again, not trying to put you on the spot, but very curious as your efficiency targets as it pertains to continuous improvement.
I'll start, and then if others want to jump, I saw Britta, you were jumping on as well. I guess I just want to anchor that I think that continuous improvement and some of the goals that we're seeking maybe don't boil down to a single number, Daryl, but are reflective in the goals of the strategic plan, especially just as an example, as we think about contracts and procurement timelines and financial invoice processing timelines. There's some goals that are outlined on that slide that we saw earlier of kind of decreasing the amount of time it takes us to process those things from invoices or contracts. And so to be able to achieve those improvement opportunities, those goals in the strategic plan, it takes a range of different strategies to effectuate those goals. Some of that may be staffing resources to better address gaps in our ability to meet goals from a staffing perspective. Some of it may take system improvements that help, for example, process contracts more quickly to get to the point of execution. And then some of it may take operating policies that better streamline how we do some of these things. So we have internal infrastructure for some of those process improvement pieces. We also have a whole city team called the Peak Academy team anchored in our Department of Finance that helps with continuous improvement. And they feel like an extension of the host team. And they consider themselves an extension of the host team. They spend so much time with us. So I guess I just wanted to break down that I think that some of those continuous improvement pieces are anchored in some of the goals in the operating space in the strategic plan that would take personnel, systems, and continuous improvement from a policy and procedure development space to help effectuate. So it's a range of different strategies that may integrate into how we think about budget to fill those gaps as we move forward. But Britta, it looked like maybe you were coming off mute to add as well.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Daryl. And the thing that's kind of interesting in the citywide budgeting process is that host is a little bit of a different animal, because while most city agencies would have maybe 85 or 90+% of their costs for personnel at Host, it's a very low percent, right? When we look at our administrative costs compared to what we're distributing to the community, we have actual caps of like 8% in some of those dedicated funds, whereas that is not really how other agencies work in that same way. So in municipal government, it is pretty typical for your largest cost to be personnel, and that is not even close to the reality for Host.
That is so excellent, Britta, for you to share. I was not aware of those caps and that percent. So there is, I think, narrative within a data-focused budget presentation is so helpful, and that is one of the pieces that demonstrates, because there's always this fallback that there's this individual thought of cost of operations is really people cost, and really dollars aren't being as spent directly for the services that we're delivering on. And so I love to hear that narrative, and I don't know how that's communicated within your budget presentation to the wider administration, but I think it's a powerful thing to communicate, and that there are caps, and it's like 8% or less. So that was the heart of my question, to see if that's being looked at, that efficiency is being seen, and it's based on scale of how you're delivering for operations across the board. So thank you so much, Britta. Thank you, Laura. And I do see Maria's question in the comments, and I'll ask that as the final question for the meeting. And Maria was asking whether we would see allocation amounts or percentages by housing continuum types, for example, supportive housing, rental, home ownership, etc. So that was Maria's question, and most likely that'll be for the June present out, but is there a allocation amounts of percentages by housing continuum?
I'll just add that we do have goals within the action plan around how we will achieve a number of housing units created or preserved as far as these different types of housing, supportive housing, rental, and home ownership. We can provide a little bit more information on resources to achieve those goals, but the goals are outlined more in how many units will be produced in those different categories within our action plan, as opposed to dollars associated with it. But if that's a question we want to dig a little bit more into as a supplement to what's outlined in the action plan, we can certainly focus on that for June.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Maria, for working with us and going through the technical difficulties to get your voice into the room. I want to do one quick look around the room in our last minute to see if are any final questions. I see Sabrina's hands are up. And I also see Britta's hand. And so Britta, I'll turn it to you after Sabrina to close us out.
I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to acknowledge Marcia, and I think that's what Britta was.
Oh, Marcia's here?
She's not, but I think we want to do it anyway, and
yes.
then we'll send something to her separately.
So Britta, I'll turn to you, and then I'll love a few words at the end. So I'll turn to you to start off the thank you to the amazing Marcia.
Yes. So just to let the whole body of stability advisors know that we, in fact, do have the resignation of Marcia Brown, one of our strategic advisors, and she is resigning to pursue some other opportunities at the moment, which we understand the juggle and respect balancing one's time. And we just can't let her go without acknowledging her contributions. She's an original member of our Housing Stability Strategic Advisors. She provided some essential guidance and great questions on our 5-year strategic plan. She has courageously and beautifully shared her personal experience and expertise in homelessness and housing instability as part of the Close to Home storytelling campaign to raise awareness about housing and homelessness in Denver. She also used her story as the keynote speaker of our 2019 Housing Forum, where we kicked off our hope for this new Department of Housing Stability and announced that. So that was a special day. She's been a featured voice of lived expertise in our citywide sensitivity training for people working with people experiencing homelessness, and has been a strong advocate on this body for communicating directly with those we serve. And so I've known Marcia for a very long time in actually several different roles, and consider her a personal friend, and I just want to present with her a letter from the mayor acknowledging her service. And so we'll be sending that out to Marcia as well. So thank you, Marcia Brown, for what you've already contributed, and I'm sure will continue to contribute in your new and other roles.
Thank you so much, Britta, for that heartfelt thank you to Marcia Brown. I won't add too much because you've said it all. I think one of the greatest things for Marcia's involvement on this board is her speaking from her perspective, her lived experience. Her questions were always rooted in, how is the communication getting out? Who are we speaking with? And it was always from a place of curiosity, a place of care, and a place of love. And you can see from her picture in this, and I think this is such a wonderful picture. Whoever took this is awesome. She will be missed on this board for being at each meeting, but know that her voice is going to continue being heard in the work done by Hassa, and absolutely her friendship with Britta and host, her voice will continue to be heard within the department. So thank you for your leadership, Marcia Brown. Thank you, Britta, for this wonderful kind of a statement of the good work and value that Marcia provided, and can't think of a better way to conclude our meeting today. So thank you all, members of the community, of the public, members of staff, and members of Hassa for being on this meeting today. Thank you for your service, and look forward to speaking with each of you next month. And our meeting in June, I don't have the date in front of me, so I don't know, Britta, Sabrina, if you have that date.
Yep, Katie, can you just move to that last slide? It has it on there. Sorry. Oh, wait, it should be there on the very, very, very last slide.
There it
we
is.
go.
June 17th. So I look forward to speaking and seeing each of you on the 17th. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Daryl.